Today is Monday, October 1st, 2018. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I would like to see if I acknowledge the media. The media is not present that I can see. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
let's
Let's have a motion to approve and second, and then we can discuss.
I will second.
Okay, so Jack, you made the motion. Roy, you seconded. I'm going to open it up for comments. Jack, you have first shot, and then Roy. Okay, Roy.
I would like to suggest we moved item number 12, which is an appeal by a resident, to our closed session.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else on anything on the agenda? Bunny?
I would like the project log moved to discussion, or however you want to do it. I wish we had a category here for discussion.
Okay. Would you like to move down to reports? That just make 10
Okay.
under the heading of reports?
Actually, you do, again, I'm sorry.
I know, we go
You
through this
don't,
every
you
time.
don't need to move anything. You know,
Okay.
it creates more work for staff and more bookkeeping. Just pull the item that you want to pull from the consent and discuss it right there where it's at. And then move the rest of the consent calendar as approved. And that's the way,
You would
you should-
prefer to have us do that?
yes,
Okay.
please.
Are you comfortable with that?
Okay, please repeat that.
Okay.
Just
We're gonna leave.
When we get down to number 10, we say we'd like to pull it for discussion.
that's
Right,
it.
we would like to discuss it. So what
Right.
are we gonna, that's all we have
Just, sir,
to
you don't
say?
have to move it. It's
Okay.
Right, okay. Yes, Kush?
We were going to add two items to the calendar, I mean, to the, excuse me, the agenda.
Okay, what are they?
One was about the 3271 and the
No, I said, no, that's something that staff is still working on. They have to work on it up in alterations, and I haven't heard a word
they
from it.
haven't? Okay.
All right, we talked about that on Friday.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
and the other one was about the video.
Yes. You want to put that as number 15?
Which one is that?
It would be number 15, a new one.
And when-
Talk about videoing the streetlights in their current state with the video club may want to help us with that.
It's a before and after with the lights that we are going to install, the street lights.
Okay,
So we can and we have a volunteer from the video club who would like to help us with it. So, and they're professionals, they do this as a thing for them, business as well as a hobby. So,
Okay. Well, that item we'll put on number
so
15.
are they doing this as a business or a hobby?
we have to talk to them. Most likely it will be a complimentary video for the village.
Okay.
Okay. And do I have any other items for discussion? Any other changes? So we have an amendment, we have a motion that has been amended. Okay? All those in favor of the motion as amended? Okay, it looks unanimous, all right. Next item, approval of meeting report from August 6th. I have a motion for that? Do you have a second?
Second,
Okay, a second. Any discussion on the report? If there are none, we'll move on to number 5, chair's remarks, and I'm going to spare you the chair's remarks. So, no chair's remarks.
Don't we have to
So now
vote?
we're going to open the meeting for member comments. No comments on anything that's currently on the agenda, but you can talk about anything you want. Are there any folks that want to come up and have comments? Okay. Please come forward, then.
Okay. On number 6, where we talked about, where it says I commented on the library and vinyl room.
Is your mic on?
Is her, I don't
is your
hear-
microphone on?
I don't know. They turned it on over there.
Okay, start again.
I want it, this is the third time. I want to have the mailroom floor replacements on the future agenda. I don't want it to go away from there. It's been on and off for a year. It needs to be on there. It's real important. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. And just think, next month, you can bring that right straight forward from this dais. Congratulations, by the way. Okay. All right. If there are no further member comments, I'm going to go to item number 7, department head update. Ernesto, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, I don't have any updates. I will be discussing the project log. I have some updates for you, though, so I'll wait till we get to that item, which it's next.
Okay, we are now down to the consent calendar, okay? Bunny, did you want to discuss the project log?
Well, I just had a couple of questions on here, but does he want to give us an update first and then?
You want to do it that way, and then,
It's your pleasure. I can go first if you want me to.
okay?
Yes, I'd rather have you go first because you may answer all the questions I have.
Right,
Sure, sure.
Before we go there, since on the consent calendar, we have the programs report and the maintenance expenditures variance explanations. If there's nothing there, we'll go right to the project log then.
So you can move the rest of the calendar, and
And-
we'll
right.
discuss the project log. yeah.
We'll move, so I have a motion to move the consent calendar with items 8 and 9 and number 10 for discussion.
I move.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, all right.
Aye.
Ernesto, it's yours on the project log.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the September project log, it's pretty up to date, but there's some items, as you know, that between the time that we put this together and the time that we get to this meeting that you know, the clock keeps moving. So there's things that I like to just bring you up to date with. Beginning with the waistline remediation, we've completed, we added project 24, building 2404 was completed, and we'll be completing this project by November before Thanksgiving, so that's perfect timing for us. We do want to cut these projects off right before Thanksgiving, because then we have all the holidays, so we don't want to be in the middle of the community when the holidays roll along, so.
So you'll be doing all 150 by
90?
Thanksgiving?
Yeah,
No, we'll be completing the buildings that we had anticipated completing. There were,
150, 150 buildings.
Or estimated.
no, that's total estimated to be completed this year. I don't think we'll be completing all of those, yeah. That's what we estimated initially, but you're,
How many will be completed? Because we're putting together our achievements for the year and we're including that number. So it's a different.
we'll be slightly short of that, and I'll check, and I'll go ahead and I'll email everyone in the committee so that you know how many buildings exactly we should be able to wrap up. But I think we'll come very close, but I'm not sure we'll be able to do 150.
Okay, Bunny, and then John?
My question on that particular line item is the fact that in your project log, you state that we have about 90 more, but that's questionable. And my question is, do we have enough money?
No, the funding is it's adequate to complete actually the 150 that we anticipated doing.
Okay.
So we have adequate funding. And then remember, you entered into a multi-year contract, so we'll be able to start this work shortly in January with the second batch of work. And we're going to be concentrating on 3-story buildings.
Okay.
Question?
John has a question.
Ernesto, question on the scope. How far back from the building toward the sewer do you remediate the waistline?
We're remediating from where the sewer enters the building.
Oh, from that point?
All the way up.
So you don't do anything between the building and the sewer?
We don't go all the way out to the street, to where the main is, if that's your question. Yeah, we don't go all the way up to where we tie to the main. So everything within the building is completed, where the line enters the building.
And of course, the reason for my question is we begun talking about the capacity of 3-story buildings, and therefore I wanted to know how good the waistlines were. And apparently they are pretty good all the way back to the main. And they will be all remediated.
They will, once remediated, your capacities will also increase.
Thank you.
Because remember, you're removing all the gunk that's there, and then you're pushing the epoxy blotter through it. The blotter itself, the lining itself, is actually like glass. So your end value, your resistivity on the pipe increases tremendously, so it allows much better flow of fluids through it. So you end up with a larger capacity. Even though you're reducing the diameter, your capacity will increase because the flow capacity will increase on the pipe.
Thank you.
You said you don't go all the way out to the sewer, am I?
Not to the street, no.
But is that true when you do Manners also? Because they did mine a long time ago.
Right.
And it seemed that they went out to the sewer.
I'm not aware that we go all the way out to the street.
You go to the
Yes.
cul-de-sac?
Yeah.
You go to the
right.
cul-de-sac,
To the
but you don't go-
cul-de-sac, to the cul-de-sac.
You go to the cul-de-sac, but you don't go all the way to the
We
main?
don't,
on the
we don't
street?
tie to the main, that's correct.
Okay.
Ernesto, I have a question. We had a hiccup in a three-story building with the waistline. Is that being worked, and are the processes getting updated in that?
Thank you for prompting me on that one. Yeah, there was a problem that we had with some release of some of the sewage. Apparently, it's difficult for the residents at times to just not flush. You know, we do let them know that they have one free use of the toilet, but they don't have to flush. But people forget. So there was a little bit of a sewage spilled in the garage, and I stopped the contractor actually because it's very, very serious for us and for water quality issues and for health issues for a number of reasons. So the reason why we stopped the contractor is so that they could put a comprehensive SOP program for us. Also, we requested that they give us a letter understanding the full extent of the Water Quality Act, because we could be in for thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in fines from the Regional Water Control Board if there's any water release into the storm drains. So they provided us a pretty comprehensive SOP. We have that, we approved it, and we also got that letter certified under letterhead with their CO's signature, so we have that as well. We had a number of meetings with them, which culminated on a working plan. We also are going to be tightening up on the communication piece of it. We're going to be meeting, particularly in multi-story buildings, we're going to be meeting with all the residents for every one of those buildings before we start the work, so that we can do a full presentation and they can understand exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what the constraints are when we go through the program. To avoid that, as far as containment of any of the contaminated liquids, all of that is being addressed. We're using all kinds of new containment methods. If there were ever to be any spill or anything, we would disinfect it immediately. We will not be just laying around. We also change where we're going to be staging the equipment and the materials for the contractor. So a number of things change, and we've since then turned them loose, so they're resuming their work, and that was. Began with a large meeting at the building where the issues occurred to reassure everyone there that everything had been taken care, that there's no contamination, that that building where the spills occur were disinfected, and that and to gather their feedback as to what kind of things they wanted to see change. So all of that has been incorporated into the program now. Yeah.
Is the Gardenville Association aware of that?
No,
Oh.
not at all.
Okay, so
Yeah.
basically, since you've got it there, you probably should communicate it.
Yeah, it was isolated to one building, so it was not communicated to everyone.
Right.
And the idea is that it was a learning experience for us.
sure.
It was a come to Jesus moment for everybody. And the program has been revamped to make sure that to preclude this. And it should be seamless to everybody else where the work will take
Right, and
place.
that's what I was referring to, is that probably should let the Garden Villa people know that this is coming and that they've got a good process in place. They're going to be doing that, and that they shouldn't sneak into the rec room to take a potty break while they're doing this work, because the rec room is also, could be a
They
problem.
have to know that because a lot of them stop there on the way home.
Yeah, I hear you, okay.
That's right, and that was part of the conversation when we did meet with the building and the building captains, and we'll be doing that for every building so that everyone is aware of what can and cannot be done during the process.
Well, thank you, Ernesto, that's good news, thank you, appreciate it.
The second item I wanted to give you a quick update on is on 2018 electrical system program. As you know, this is a contingency program for when there are panel failures. However, you budgeted $50,000 for that. We've only had 2 replacements this year, so there's about $42,000 left in the budget. So we would like to utilize that. We did discover that some of the Garden Villa buildings are not up to code relative to grounding of their main panels. When they installed these main panels, they just tied wire to a water line, which is really not the appropriate way of doing it. You actually need to sink a copper rod in the ground and do it properly. So we're going to utilize this money to make those improvements coming up. So we'll be doing about 12 buildings this year, about $25,000 worth.
You say this year, 2019? Or the rest
No,
of-
this year.
The rest of this year? in
Yeah,
the
the
next
rest
3
of
months?
this year, right.
Okay,
So we anticipate spending about another $25,000 out of this budget, not for panels, but actually to correct that code requirement on the panels, on the existing panels that we have.
how many buildings do you?
12 buildings, I
12
think we'll be
buildings,
able to
you
do.
say? Will be
Yeah.
12 buildings?
Yeah.
Does that mean then we're gonna have a project to recheck the grounding on all of the buildings?
I think that the fact that we encountered this, we're going to be inspecting every one of them and making sure that in the future that becomes part of this program to replace those grounds if they need to be replaced.
You satisfied with that, Bert?
That, considering Edison didn't put a neutral wire in a lot of those systems either, to
Right.
go to their transformers, it's amazing.
How come
Okay.
it took so long for us to discover this?
It's something nobody's really looking at. It's the wire, it's a little copper line that comes out of the panel, and it should really be welded onto a copper rod inserted in the ground. In this case, the wire comes out of the panel, and now you'll probably be looking at, so you can go see this, and it ties with a little coupler onto the existing water line. That's great in my house, but it's not even to code in my house if I did it that way. But a lot of homes are done that way. But for a large building with multiple tenants, that's something that we definitely want to correct, so. And then the next one is on the laundry equipment improvements. That's item number 3. So, and we have a full report on that today for you in closed session. So just wanted to let you know that the timing on this, once approved tonight, we will take it possibly to the October 16th meeting of the board to award a contract. Once we award a contract, we can begin to work with the vendor to develop a schedule of deployment of the machines. I think it should go fairly quick. So, but I'll go into more detail in closed session on that. I also wanted to update you on the pest control for termites. Our September update indicates that there were 46 buildings scheduled for 2018, and 36 have been completed. We've actually completed 40 to date, and 40. Oh, I'm sorry, item number 7. 2018 pest control for termites. So as of today, we completed 40 buildings, And we'll be completing 5 more. 5 are scheduled to be done today, right?
Yes.
Yeah, today and tomorrow.
45 instead of 46, right?
We may be able to do the 46. I know that 5 are scheduled for today and tomorrow. I'll find out what happened to that extra one.
It's not up yet. It'll be done.
On the trash chutes, that's item number 10. I just wanted to report that we had a slight setback on the program because they proposed to install a frame on a door that staff was not happy with. So we had them go back to the drawing board and provide us something more substantial that would work better with what we have. So they did that, and they came back, and we turned them loose again, and they've already completed 4 buildings so far. So it just, they look good. They look good, they're nice and quiet, they're solid, so check them out next time you're near them.
Is it 2353, one of those buildings?
Yes,
Now, how many have you done? I'm sorry.
4 buildings today. Item number 11, this is your 2018 roofing replacement program. I just wanted to update you that we've completed 38 buildings up to today. The Seal Coat Program, that's item number 13, the 2018 Seal Coat Program, that program is now complete. So we'll be moving it to the complete list with the next update. And
May I ask you a question on the seal coat? The seal coat is being done to all the El Toro Water District areas that they dug up the streets.
that's part of a requirement that we have for
Yeah.
them, yes.
So that means after they finish trenching, they put the blacktop or whatever you call it.
They'll do a complete pave out
Uh-huh.
of the trench initially they put temporary in there, and we got a lot of complaints because everybody thought that was done. We're not done. They came back and they removed the temporary asphalt and they put a hot patch on it.
Okay.
To our specifications. They completed that, they paved it, they rolled it, finished product. But because of the looks of a patch, we don't want to end up with a patch in the middle of our street. We also require them to do seal coating on them. So you end up with a uniform surface, which is restriped, so you get a fresh looking pavement.
So there are certain sections, particularly cul-de-sacs 326, 327, and I think 328, which don't look done completely.
But this is El Toro Water that's responsible for that in the contract, right?
If it's an El Toro, that's correct. That's correct. That's for El Toro water that I'm speaking of.
Could you
Right.
have one of your young gentlemen take a look at this?
We'll take a look at those cul-de-sacs for
Yeah.
you.
Well,
326,
They-
27, and 28 for sure.
Sure.
when they installed the water pipes, they essentially dug narrow channels for the pipes, right?
Right.
And that was resurfaced. But if you look at some of the cul-de-sacs and streets, you have the area where they didn't resurface, but their trucks have, I think, damaged that surface.
We will have to take a look
No
at
way you
that.
see
Yeah,
that, you
because,
see it on Bahia Blanca West, heading up from Sosiego. That they've repaid most of that, but there are spots that are worn from their trucks. I don't think that's normal wear that we see that are untouched. And that road is very unequal, very
Okay.
uneven.
we'll take a look at it because they're supposed to repair everything in kind. So if they did cause damage, and I believe I'm not 100% sure, but typically we like to videotape before and after. So we'll go ahead and review those areas
Just
to make
drive,
sure.
just drive up there and you'll see.
We'll take a look at it.
There's also all the loose gravel also on the street where I'm talking about, on 326.
Okay, that they should have taken care of with the sweepers, but if not, if it's still in that condition, we'll double check on that.
Okay.
Okay. James?
Well, I want to make one comment, but one question. comments is, El Toro Water is supposed to do those resurface twice. The first time, it just roughly covered up. The second time, they will try to make the road uniform. So check with El Toro Water. Maybe they just haven't completed yet, but they're supposed to do that.
They don't
Later
do
come
the-
back to
they don't-
redo the surface.
The surfaces that I've seen near
Yeah.
where I live were not done completely.
Well, maybe not in this part, but check with El Toro Water.
We'll check with the Toro Water District. I know that it's a two-phase process.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
initially they do temporary work.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a paving machine and rollers and everything right there when they're filling the trench.
Right.
So they do temporary work, and then they come back, they actually excavate the temporary material, and they do a full overlay
Well,
of the trench.
I've seen cul-de-sacs where they've come back and they're still not completely covered. But you look at that.
I'll definitely double check on
Yeah,
that.
check with them,
Thank you.
because if they don't do a good job, I will complain to them, because they promise, they say, oh,
They
we'll
don't do a
come
good
back.
No.
job, they'll shut off your water.
No, they'll do a good job.
Yeah, they'll
El Toro
do-
Water
okay,
District
good.
is,
Yeah.
they're
But-
responsible.
Yeah, but the second part, Ernest, when you say it's, El Toro Water is responsible, they're not responsible for this seal coat program, do they?
No, they do. If they repair the trench and they do the final paving and they leave a trench in the middle of the street, we require them to seal coat so that you end up with street test uniform.
Okay.
What I'm trying to impress upon people, there's two different seal coat programs.
Yeah.
One El
One
Toro's
is ours.
responsible,
And
and
one
the
that we
one
do
that's
it.
on this project log is our responsibility.
This is our.
Yeah.
Third
yeah, that's-
mutual.
yeah,
Okay,
well,
well,
we started-
that's where I confuse it.
That's right.
Which part is ours, which part is theirs?
Well, we had our own program. They were responsible for the areas that they disturbed
Okay.
with their water lines, so.
Okay, I have a question.
That's-
Ernesto, do we have a well-defined buy-off program where each phase of the El Toro Water District project is bought off by our team?
Yes, actually, they retain the services of a construction management firm, and we've been working very closely with them. Before they start any phase or before they complete any phase, we do go out there and we sign it off.
That was my question.
Right.
Thank you.
But as they complete each phase, doesn't mean that the entire project is complete. Because when they complete the phase, like I said, they do temporary paving. So then they have to come back and do the entire work, the entire
Well,
phase.
that should be built into the buy-off.
Right, but it is, yes. And let's see what else. Just wanted to briefly touch on item 16. Sorry I'm taking so much time. You wanted me to talk, so I can
That's what
talk.
we want.
Item 16 is the 2018 building address signs. We installed some building address signs at gate 14 as well as cul-de-sac 212. The building signs were very well received. The program was completed. We were hoping to receive additional direction on that. We have not. We're still waiting for that. We also installed a pilot cul-de-sac sign at cul-de-sac 212. That was also very well received I've gotten several emails from residents, as well as Director Bruninghouse. Thank you. He was very pleased with the looks and of the sign, but we did stop the program, and we're at this point just waiting for additional direction to staff to move forward. There's about $14,000 left in this year's capital. So we can do more cul-de-sac signs, or we can do building signs somewhere else. Again, it's at your pleasure. We're just looking for direction.
Troy?
There seems to be some miscommunication. The last communication I had with Brad was that he thought that cul-de-sac sign at 212 was horrible. And he, talking with Bruce, and I don't know whether you were in that conversation or not, they wanted to look at the Telstar, is that the right name for the thing?
Fell start, and it's a different post. It's a post that is kind of in the shape of a hat, and it has slots on it. So you can actually install a sign with a bolt through it, and you can move it up and down. It's typically what's used in traffic type of applications. What we did at cul-de-sac 212 is that there was an existing pole there, so we didn't want to purchase an additional pole, so we utilized the existing pole. And we came up with a clip that actually clips the two signs. It's welded to the back of the sign, and it clips the two signs on the pole. So it was very convenient, it was inexpensive, that's why we didn't use it. If we don't have an existing pole, then we could very well go with a Felstar pole. But
The other part of that conversation, and which also included Rosemarie, is that members of the board need to get out of the technical part of doing signs. It's caused all kinds of confusion and problems and difficulties. Staff, in my understanding, has a clear, as you have described, a clear idea what you'd like to do. And I think what you need to do is take the ball and run with it and bring your suggestions to us. And then as a board, we can do the policy thing.
Right.
But quite honestly, I'm done personally running around doing sign work. I'd be happy to look at whatever you guys come up with.
Well,
But there's one final provision, Mr. Chairman, and that is do not take the signs out of my cul-de-sac. I will be out there with a shotgun because everybody loves them.
So, yeah, and again, this is the sign, in case you haven't seen it.
I love it.
I sent an email to you, and I think that we put it up on the screen as well here last time. If you can find it real quick, we could put it up. But it was very well received. If we get direction to install the balance of the needed cul-de-sac signs at Gate 14, we'll be happy to move forward with this. We've already, again, this is our recommendation. So we've done our portion of the work. We just need policy direction at this point.
So
That's the one we can use in our
That's the cul-de-sac
presentation.
sign.
That was the one that's just recently
Yeah,
been
you can see it on
taken.
your screen.
I've got Kush and then Bert.
This sign sits on the grass or whatever the grassy area. On the stop sign, is it?
Right.
Okay. Can it be seen from both sides?
Yes,
Good.
and at night.
And at night.
It lights up like a Christmas tree. You ought to come over and visit.
I will.
think you should.
Thank you. The only other observation that I had while walking near my house, excuse me, is that if there are certain poles which sit on the sidewalk, are we going to continue to push them into the grass, or are we going to push them onto the sidewalk?
What do you mean by on
There's
the
a reason why
sidewalk?
I'm asking this question. The reason is that when we take a walk, this is pretty low. So when you're taking a walk, you might hit your shoulder or something to it, or somebody shorter might hit their head to it.
Right. So if we were, if we were to install these signs and the pole happens to be on the concrete, we would move it.
To the grass.
It would move to
Whatever you call that, the
right, the parkway, because
parkway.
obviously we don't want to obstruct or create a danger to everybody walking around it, so.
There was also conversation that when the lawn mowing people have a problem going around these kind of poles, so we need to have that equal balance between the landscape and the MNC for poles situation, location.
Kush, those poles have been there forever. That's a stop sign pole.
If you're moving it, I said.
Oh, if you're moving it, then
Yes.
you just make a little, like you can see, it's set in concrete. There's a little area right there. And if our guys can't drive around it, then we better check their
Driver's
breath.
license.
Their breath.
or their lawnmower.
Or the lawnmower.
Bert Baum?
I just wondered, where do these curb signs now sit? Remember, we had some pilots, I guess, where we actually put the manor numbers on the curb signs at the entrance to the cul-de-sac. And I thought that was pretty effective. There's still a few around. Are we still looking at that or considering that?
That's just, you and I are going to be gone here in about. after
Well,
this.
I'm
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
the whole
The-
committee.
You're counting your
The committee's
minutes.
going to have to
I'm
decide on
alerting
that.
them to
Yeah,
this
yeah, that's right.
possibility.
Right.
Yeah, so essentially the direction we're looking for is that if this is a sign that the committee it's agreeable with, we'll go ahead and have this signs fabricated. We'll look for opportunities to use existing mounts that are already there. If there happen to be a pole or a post that's already available, our first thought is going to be to try to use that post, so we don't create additional work, additional cost. But if there isn't one, then we'll be looking for, to install the new post, and perhaps to create an area, like Roy said, a little bit of cement around it, so that the lawnmowers can get around them and have enough room to cut the grass around them.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, Steve?
Couple of questions and a couple of reminders. The sign that we're looking at the screen, do we know how many signs like that might be installed in a total project?
For the total project, Steve, I don't have a number. What I do know is that, because we had a remaining balance of $14,000, that we could install, let's see, I do have a number here. We could purchase approximately 52 cul-de-sac signs in the balance of this fiscal year.
So what's the cost per sign?
The cost per sign is about $271 if you buy over 100, but they've given us the $100 price, anticipating that we're going to buy more signs from them.
But we don't know the total number of signs that might be implemented over a total project at this
For
point.
the total community, no, at this
Yeah.
point, I don't.
So I think that's one thing that the committee has to know, because finance is going to have to know, because the board is going to have to eventually know.
Sure.
I mean, if it's 1,000 signs at $271 a piece, it's $250,000. Number two,
How many cul-de-sacs are there? Does anybody know how many cul-de-sacs in Third Mutual there are? There can't probably be more than a couple hundred, right?
well,
That's a good
you've got
question.
entrances to three-story buildings that really aren't cul-de-sacs so much.
I'm talking about cul-de-sac signs only.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about signs, just the cul-de-sac.
Right,
signs like
no,
that.
exactly,
Yeah,
but sometimes
yeah.
you have
So you're gonna have
these
two-
cut-in
you're gonna have-
and cut-outs.
Right, you're gonna have two signs per
Two
per
on
pole.
each side, and
Right.
sometimes you have multiple entries to the three-story buildings, like by Clubhouse 5. I don't remember the numbers, but Bahia Blanca West, right there at that corner, up there by Clubhouse 5. There's an entrance in one, it's a horseshoe kind of thing.
Sure.
So you'll have two, and
Sure.
so just looking for some information. Number two,
There'll be more money next year.
I recall many conversations about signs like this being at this level, specifically possibly being a problem for landscape. All of the signs that we've ever had are on top of the stoplights, stop signs, way up here at 8 feet high or whatever it is. And the reason for that was on those caps is all the conversations always were, if you have them down too low, one, pedestrians as a possible liability, and number two, the landscape. So if you look at this pole on this picture, you'll see that you've got a very small area of dirt around the grass. If you're going to implement these larger signs, you're probably going to have to take out more grass and do something to make sure that the equipment can get around that, just as an aside.
Yeah, and I think that's just something they're gonna have to work out with landscaping.
Understood,
Yeah,
but
right.
one of my concerns is going back to the cost of the signs and the number of signs, because once you start this project, if you do 20 signs or 50 signs or whatever it is, and you run out of money, and then people come back to you and say, do you want us to continue? And then you look at the total overall cost of the project, and you go, well, we don't want to spend that much money and do that and still have a landscape issue or whatever it is. The sooner that that's known will probably be better than after a larger implementation of the pilot, just as a thought. And number three, to my knowledge, the curb paintings of the numbers was done years ago
By staff.
by staff, and it never moved forward with any other full cost consideration or report. So you really got to get a number on that to make the decision. That was when Ernesto's predecessor was here, and they put the B in front of the building number for,
The address number.
and the address number, and that was done in a very limited basis on Bahia Blanca West, as I recall. But my personal opinion has always been that that is something that should be adopted throughout the entire village, including in United, because it is customary in many cities, so it's a known thing. And I think you really need a staff report on what it costs to develop that throughout Third would be.
Are you taking notes on this? Because I think, Roy, even though you want to walk away from this, I think, you may not be the guy, but somebody on this committee, on this committee or on this board probably needs to get together with staff and to give them some parameters, because in my cul-de-sac, well, I mean, it depends where you are. Some cul-de-sacs don't have a decent curb to paint on.
Well,
So staff is gonna have to go out and figure that out.
That was going to be my
what-
point. If you look at this picture, the only curb and gutter is on Via Puerta, which is where all the cars are parked. Everything in my cul-de-sac, this 212, is swale. So, if you paint it on a flat surface, you're not going to see it, and particularly, you're not going to see it at night. So I don't know, we're back to this whole thing about one size does not fit all. And the other point I would make is you don't have to do this all in 1 year. If it's a 5-year project in terms of cost, you can spread it out over 5 years. It really doesn't argue for doing it all at once. Obviously, it will be somewhat expensive. The key is how effective it's going to be. And I would think staff would want to test this out, and if you have multiple approaches, then, you could have some here. The 3 stories don't necessarily lend themselves to some of the signage that we've looked at, but certainly the 1 story and the 2 stories do. And if you look at this building over here on the picture, if you go just a little bit farther to the right, you're going to see one of our new building signs. And they light up at night like a Christmas tree. So this notion that these signs are no good at night is just baloney. They may not be good on 3-story buildings where they're, way up high, but on a 1 or a 2-story, because what you did on the 2 stories was you put that sign low enough so that the headlights hit it. And that's why everybody loves it in this cul-de-sac.
To
Yeah,
close,
if I may-
just if I could
Yeah, go ahead,
close.
Ernesto.
I just wanted to add to what Roy mentioned, that he brings up some very good points. Relative to the cost of, Steve suggested a report on the cost. What we can do is, because the best cost you have is this cost here, because this is what it costs. We just pay for it, $271.
Times how many
So
signs?
we can determine how many cul-de-sacs there are, and just, without going out in the field and determining exactly where they go and all of that, we can give you a rough number of what that would be. What I'm simply suggesting is that you have $14,000 left this budget year. Do you want us to install more cul-de-sac signs, or you want us to install additional building number signs? And as Roy suggested, you budgeted the same amount for building signs for next year, $39,000. So it's not a program that you want to complete in 2 years. There's absolutely no reason to do that. But you need to make some headway at some point. We've been talking about this for years, and nothing has been done. So this is the first building signs that we put up. This is the first cul-de-sac sign that we put up. Everybody seems to be happy with them. I'm just suggesting that, let's make a decision so that we can get some work done for you guys.
Kush?
Yes, just a small correction. At $271 each, even if we had 300 or 500 cul-de-sacs, it comes out to $135,000, not $250,000. And At 35,000, or how much did we initially appropriate?
39,000.
39,000. We can double that up next year, and we may be able to achieve a substantial amount if we can just get a count of the buildings and the cul-de-sacs that we need. Then we can get to a good number and do it in a year or two. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, Bunny?
My suggestion is to prioritize. And the only way we can prioritize is because everyone talks about the different types. You know, like there's the poles that are already there. And the signs that can be seen. You know, so as far as these cul-de-sac signs, there's different types of work that has to be done, basically on installing. I don't know if I'm saying this right. But my thinking is that we should get a count of all of the poles, the existing poles that we could install this on, because that would be the first priority, right? And the second priority would be with the poles that we have to move. We have no idea how many poles there would have to be to move, correct? So if we could get it sort of phased, I think it would be a lot easier to handle.
I think that that's a very good point. Let me restate, though, the request. If we could just give us authority to install the next $14,000 worth of signs, we will look for the poles that are existing where we could do this without adding additional poles. So we can get some of these signs in the ground for you, instead of waiting for another report in which you're not going to see any signs for the balance of this year.
So which signs do you want to
So
do? This cul-de-sac or the street?
We can do either. We can do cul-de-sac signs. We can go ahead and move on because they're cul-de-sac signs. So the building signs, we had originally proposed that staff go out there and identify the locations, and we were told no. We want the board to do that. So both Rosemarie and Roy went out there and they selected building locations and all that. But staff can do that for you. But if you direct us to move forward and just install cul-de-sac signs, we can easily do that. And we'll prioritize them to install them at those locations where you have a pole. The problem with that is that we may end up with some cul-de-sacs done and then a cul-de-sac in between not completed. You know, but if you give us direction and some flexibility to do this for you, we'll go ahead and install the balance of the budget on cul-de-sac signs. And we'll find the most economical way of doing that for you.
Roy, do you want to take the lead on this?
No,
Okay.
I mean,
So-
seriously,
Okay, well, how is this going to move forward then from this committee?
somebody's gonna have to pick up the slack, because for some reason, and probably one of the reasons it's been kicking around for as long as it's been kicking around, this is a very controversial thing, because you're talking about putting something on a building that everybody can see. The amazing thing about these signs that we put in this cul-de-sac is that everybody likes them. So we may be onto something here. But again, this is one-story and two-story buildings. And Bert, I know what you're gonna say, because I've heard it 45 times. The three-story buildings don't lend themselves to these kinds of ovals on the building themselves. They're either too high or too far back, and people do have a hard time finding.
I really would like to bring this conversation to an end, because what I'm trying to do is get somebody to help staff go forward with this. I've got Jack, I've got Steve, I've got Kush, and then I got James, and I'm going to cut it off. Go ahead, Jack.
I will put myself in the line of fire on this project.
Okay, that's good. In fact, that should end the conversation as far as I'm concerned. And if you want to get together with Mr. Leonard, Kush, or whoever else, please go forward.
I'm Steve.
I'm cutting it out. Bert, I'm not going to talk about it
I'm not
anymore.
going to say that. I want to say about the cul-de-sac signs. There are cul-de-sac signs in this community, okay, that are perfectly good if you drive around, as I have done. And the problem that we found is where the cul-de-sac signs are too high, which it's too set back far away from the curb, where you can't see them, they're set back into the cul-de-sac, okay? I had recommended that a pilot be run, take the existing cul-de-sac signs, because they work on the lower poles,
Okay.
okay? And move them and lower them, and see how that works before you go out
And I think
and spend
Ernesto was
money on
talking
buying
about,
signs.
right, and I think Ernesto was talking about the possibility of them moving those signs, particularly ones off the concrete where they would want them. So, Jack, it's in your ballpark. There's a number of people that have their opinions who have looked at this a long time, and we want to thank Bert for all the effort he's put in, Steve for the effort he's put in. But, guys, I'm done with this conversation because I'm a short timer, and I want to get through this meeting, and I want to get out of here this afternoon. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. Go ahead.
Okay.
Move on.
Oh, I got about another 25 projects I want to update you on.
You're excused.
We're done.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll move on. Whoops.
Can I, just one thing?
No, not the action.
I was driving the other day, and I saw that there was a number of, there's an effort going on to replace some of the split rail fencing. And I looked down here and I noticed that there was an expenditure of like $23,000 on split rail fencing. But there's nothing in the project log that,
On the carpentry.
but why isn't that in the project log?
That's just repair. It's actually not, we're not replacing any of it. We're repairing the ones that are damaged as part of the operational budget, but it's not.
You have a repair program.
We don't have a project.
You have a project
No,
program.
we don't have.
Have a project. When do we see that? We don't. We don't see that then at
Yeah,
all.
the board put that on hold, as you may recall, some time ago, because they wanted to discuss different materials and black locust and some other things.
Okay.
So it was put on hold by the board, so staff has not done anything with it.
This, your thing, that was amazing to me, this was a repair. There was a whole section that had been replaced.
Yeah, they are. Right there in Carrizo. You can just see it, or up on Via Vista. Yeah.
Yeah, so that, to me, is not repair, that's almost total replacement.
Yeah. So, okay.
So
Bunny?
just one more comment. And that's on the breezeway resurfacing. And what I find, is the waterproof top coat that we're using right now is not stain-proof. And it easily scuffs. And so what do we tell residents that we should do when they're all scuffed up and need to be recleaned? Because they're not going to be redone for 5 years, and then it looks messy. So I'd like to know if there is another top coat that you might be able to suggest, that would be more stain-proof, or how do the residents, get that cleaned up if they need to get it cleaned up?
Sure. There is no other coating that I can think of that will not scuff. They will all scuff. Depending on what color you select, they may show less. You may select scuff color. If they scuff though, if they stained, our custodial can clean that up. And they have in the past. I know there was an issue with the usage of water in the past, but they will spray it clean. And they will do that. So you can call in and have the building captain or the resident put in a request through resident services, and general services will send a custodial crew to do that cleaning for
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you.
What item was that?
6.
Okay, moving along. We've got reports on number 11, fire avert devices. Ernesto?
Mr. Chair, Chief Tim Moy will be presenting this item for you.
Floor is yours, Tim.
Well, good afternoon,
afternoon.
Chair Walsh, honorable board members of the M&C Committee. This is an initiative, a proposal that originally came through our disaster preparedness task force. I think we've got a few members of Third Mutual that actually serve on that. And I believe Kush even attended a demonstration. FireVert is a fire prevention device, works hand in hand with our smoke alarms. First thing we did was we took a look at our statistics in the village, and you can see that as written in the staff report. And in Third Mutual, we've had about 35 fire incidents since 2014. A majority of those have been smoke, but I think we all understand that smoke still creates quite a bit of damage inside a manor as well. And a majority of those are stove fires. And looking further, and I read every one of those 58 reports, and those are just the reports that came to us. Security does respond out on those that we are called on, but I'm sure there's others where people were able to open their doors and clear it out without notifying us. I suspect there's probably more. But you would see that of those 58 kitchen incidents, 46% of the residents had left the stove unattended. And that's pretty consistent in the village. And not only that, we had a percentage of those where they'd actually left the manor. So a smoke alarm, that's great. Most of the time, that's going to alert a resident. Doesn't do any good if the resident has left the manor, or many times, due to some of our seniors, they can't hear it or they don't check it, their fire alarm to make sure it's working. The bottom line is the FireVert device, it attaches to the stove. It's hardwired into the stove, so there is a construction or a maintenance component where we would need someone to go out there and actually cut the wires, what have you, and that's about a $35 fee, and the actual cost is right around about $130 total per device. So there's a cost component to it. The pros of this device is that if a resident leaves the kitchen, if they leave the manor, which we know they do, I've read reports where they're sleeping in their bedroom. They've just forgot about the stove being on. The fire alarm, smoke alarm is beeping, but they're not hearing it. And this device, what it does, it synchronizes to the alarm, and it shuts off the stove automatically. So we don't need that response. We don't need the fire to continue. There's other devices out there. We believe this is a good device. Now, the negative aspect of it, and it is significant as well, is the fact that we do rely on operating smoke alarm. Excuse me. If a smoke alarm is not working inside the manor, FireVert is not going to work because it synchronizes off that sound, and that triggers the FireVert to turn off the stove if our members, our residents, don't have a functioning smoke alarm. Then it's basically useless. So there would have to be obviously that campaign that would go along with this to ensure that our residents install and check their smoke alarms. Our recommendation was to just do a pilot project. Let's buy a few. Let's get a few in here. Let's see how they work. Let's see how difficult it is to install them. Make sure there's no hiccups there, and then maybe revisit this. Which 3 or 4 do we put in? Well, we've had a few where we would work with social services. We know those who maybe are not paying attention quite as much and put them in there, or maybe even a resident where there's been a fire in the past. So our recommendation was let's buy a few. We're not going to spend a lot of money just yet, but we'd like to take a look at it. We did look at other communities, or at least try to. Seal Beach has these as well. They just didn't get back to us. They have a small number of them, but we're not able to hear back. We did have the owner come in. He showed us how it works. It does look like it's a good device as long as the smoke alarm is working. And I'm available for questions.
Okay, Kush?
Excuse me. I have been in this question answer since the very first day it was presented, and I saw this device. In principle, this looks like the most stable thing, because what it does is it stops it at the source, meaning it cuts off electricity to the stove so the fire doesn't continue or the smoking doesn't continue. The one thing that we are constantly talking about is that we need a working smoke detector. So when we install the fire avert, what we need to do is to charge the manor a little extra and put a smoke detector which is pre-wired into the main system, because most units or manors have their mains breaker box in the hallway where there is a smoke detector. So just move that battery one and put a pre-wired one. What do you call it? Wired into the...
Hardwired.
Hardwired, correct word. So that way we will never have an issue of the battery running out, although those hardwired ones also need a battery for a backup, but we will always have a working smoke detector. And then we won't have to have a fallback kind of thing. Then we would be, and I think if we buy the number of, we are 6,000 units, if we make a deal with this company, they might even do us a special pricing, which will bring the price down a little more. So we can use the rest of the money for the electrical work that we need to do.
Bunny?
I just want to ask Tim is, what do you think would be a good number for a pilot?
Well, we just like to get a few in the community, at Third Mutual, just about 5. Just-
5, that's
Yeah,
what I
that's
was,
all.
okay.
So we're talking about less than a $600 investment right now,
Right.
just to take a look, to test them. Maybe we get them in there, and the way they're hardwired, we have some issues with our maintenance guys coming in there and trying to do the work, and now it's not a $35 fee, it's a $70 fee. Well, that would change things moving forward. Our view is get a few, bring them in, see how it works, and then reevaluate.
We have got John and then Steve, and then Bert.
Is there any reason, fellow members, that we shouldn't offer this as a chargeable service? And I would make a motion to that effect if there's any reason not to, unless there's a reason not to.
I just think we ought to do the pilot and then go forward from the pilot. And then we can either recommend at that point in time that people can buy these, as a chargeable service, the units.
In other words, you feel that we have to install a pilot first before we offer it as a chargeable service?
Well, I do feel that way, and the main reason is we have to say it's going to work. We have to.
Is there any reason to doubt that it works?
No, they gave us a demonstration of it. We
Yeah.
got to see it in a sterile environment, though. I'd like to see it inside a manor being hooked up in one of our kitchens.
Well, then I'll make a motion, we offer it as a chargeable service.
I've got a motion on the floor.
Hasn't been seconded.
Do I have a second for John's motion?
I'll second.
Okay.
Can you repeat your motion?
So now we're going to discuss that. And then I'll go to Steve, and then I'll go to Bert.
I think this has come up before, haven't we? Isn't it part of the list now? We've discussed putting.
Smoke detectors are on there, but a fire avert is not.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean you want to make the fire avert, not the smoke detector?
Oh, the smoke detector is already on as a chargeable service.
I'm sorry?
Smoke detector is already on as a
Okay.
chargeable service.
So you want to automatically.
I want to add fire
this
avert.
before we've tested it.
I have a feeling that it's pretty straightforward. You hook it to the stove and you plug it in.
Yeah, but we don't know the cost yet, John.
135.
Well, that's an estimation.
That's staff's report.
If you do 5
be-
pilots, you're going to find out how much it costs. Go ahead, Bert.
I think it's a good idea, and I think we ought to test it, but I think there's at least one consideration. Once you started the fire and you cut off the electricity, you're not necessarily stopping the fire. You've built a lot of heat up into that system, and it's not just going to automatically stop. So I think we want to try it and look at it, but realize there may be some weakness in it.
Steve?
I think this is much more an issue for United than it is for Third, because in Third, each one of you owns your own property, and as a property owner, you can elect to install this at your own expense, and you can get a reduction in your insurance with your insurance company. Number two, I can tell you in my unit in United that my kitchen is very far away from the smoke detectors in the bedrooms. So by the time the amount of particulate, whatever is being sensed, gets from the kitchen to this might be a very long time. And as Bert says, once you've built up a significant fire on a stovetop, your kitchen cabinets could already be engulfed in flames. So number one. Another point is, if you've had 58 incidences of this in over 4 years, you're talking about this affects less than 0.5% of all of the manors in the community. So,
But
just saying, because third is titled and deeded property, that it's more of an individual owner's responsibility. Also, the devices as I see them in the pictures, when these stoves are hardwired into the wall, you're going to have to break those out, and you're going to have to put a box on the wall, either a 530 connector or a 650 connector. Well, I think the stoves are 30 amps and the ovens are 50 amps. So you're going to have to break those out individually, which is going to be significantly more electrical expense in time, in labor, and in their, and you have so many different types of housing units within Third Mutual, between the 110s going all the way back to the original design construct of the first units that were done. 3-story buildings in between, LH21s. You have such a myriad here. I'm just wondering whether or not you can roll this out. I would suggest that security take this to United as a pilot, because United owns all of their units.
We've taken it.
Okay.
We're taking
So-
it to third and to you.
So we have two issues on the floor here, and I don't know whether the chair didn't handle this properly. I've got a staff member that came here asking for a pilot. I have a board member who made a motion to put this on chargeable services. So I've got to figure out which one I don't want to keep Tim
Well-
standing here for another 20 minutes.
let's vote separately.
Right.
Okay, let's vote first on the pilot.
Okay?
But may I make one comment to Steve? The number may be low, but I can tell you, those kind of fires have destroyed 3-story buildings. They have destroyed buildings. It's not a minor matter. So the number may be low, but the effect can be really disastrous, particularly if you live in a 3-story building. And that's happened. It's 3-story. It's happened in third.
Roy?
I'd like to speak to the idea of a pilot. I think it's very important. Steve made the point that we have such a variety of buildings. It's not just the buildings, though. In my kitchen, I have a cooktop, which is hardwired, and then I've got 2 wall ovens. So
You will need to.
and I don't cook, by the way. And I have never used the wall oven, so if anyone wants to buy them, make me an offer. But in order to do the job properly, my assumption is that you would have to hardwire, as you pointed out. You're going to have to put 3 boxes in there. And that's an expensive proposition for
That
me.
is not our recommendation. Our recommendation right now is on stovetops, not the ovens. The ovens, what we've seen are for the most part self-contained within the oven.
Okay,
It
but-
hasn't been an issue. Our issue is on the stovetop.
But I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure we know where to put one of these things with a hardwired cooktop.
Right, and I think that's why we want to.
That's why we want to do the pilot. So
That's
I'm
pretty much-
speaking in favor of the pilot because it gives us a better handle on what we can expect to tell the residents or what they can expect.
So Tim is here asking for some money to do a pilot.
Yep.
Uh,
Do we
I
need a
move we
motion
do
for
the
that?
pilot.
I second.
Third.
Okay, let's take a vote on that.
You
Go
have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded to act this as a charitable service
Right.
before a
I know.
pilot is executed. Just want to remind you.
I know, that's what I'm saying, is the sequence of your thing.
I can withdraw that
How
motion.
about
if the
if I
pilot passes.
withdraw my second of that?
Okay, well, we want
proposal,
to, that
will
took
be
care of that.
canceled.
Okay, all those in favor of doing a pilot with the Firebird? Okay,
And I withdraw my motion.
okay, Ernesto, you can get Tim the money to go ahead and do this.
We'll work with the chief on that. yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tim,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I'm still going to be here for the lighting though, too. So
Okay, well,
But I didn't want to tell you that now because
okay,
I wasn't sure how long Ernesto's report was going to be, so.
yeah, I understand, I understand.
more projects.
Right. Okay, we're going to move down to number 13, cleaning of alteration patio covers as a chargeable service.
Mr. Chair, would you like to move item number 14 up so that we can get rid of the chief?
That's a great point. Get rid of the chief. Okay,
I don't think we want to get rid of it.
we want to get
all right.
We just wanted to leave them so
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Why don't we move to number 14? Let's discuss the motion sensors and carports and garden villa garages. And I am going to, I don't know if we need a motion on this. I think it's just an oral discussion. And I'm going to, Jack, since you're the one that made the suggestion, I'm going to let you describe why you made the suggestion and why you think this is going to be a positive thing.
Well, I'm hopeful in the second
Okay.
I made the suggestion because in the last 6 months, our building garages they've been breaking and entering in the storage units. We also had one unit that was vacant that had the realtor's locks on it, where there's an attempt in breaking and entering. We also had our mailboxes jimmied and broken into. And I'm in a situation where particularly the women in our building are afraid to go down to the garage at night. And that is a situation that we just can't maintain. I talked to Tim about this and said, one of the concerns was homeless people coming over the back fence, and with the shepherd's crook and the repairs, that might reduce that. Tim reminded me that there have been incidents in the community where visitors had broken into, had done breaking and entering, I guess stole a bike, was that right?
Yeah, and when you're done, I'll speak to some of our thefts, and I'm happy just to give
Okay.
some context.
And a couple things were suggested to me. One is that we put motion sensor bright lights in the garage that would work at night. When somebody came in the garage, they would be met with a very bright light. That in itself might deter a person who would be a miscreant, because thieves don't like bright lights. Someone else had suggested that we put cameras in. And when I spoke to Tim about this, I think we agreed that the lights may not be a bad idea, but the idea of a camera would take a lot more work because it's complex. I also spoke about putting in this equipment when you started doing the emergency lights, Bill. And you suggested that it could be wired similar to the casing that's going around the emergency
Well,
cable.
since we're going to do 10 of these this
Yeah.
next year, if they're doing rewiring and running conduits in there for that, it might be something that, I'm not an electrician, so I don't know if it's feasible, but it was just, I know we're going to be in some of the garden villa
Yeah.
garages,
In
putting
any
in emergency lighting.
case, if acceptable, I would suggest that the lighting be started in garden villas that have had incidents. And once we get that worked out, then it could be expanded to all the garden villas.
Okay.
That's the end of my spiel.
Okay. Any board members? Steve, you had a comment before Tim says something?
We converted all of the garden villas to LED some years ago.
Right.
And we did that with Super Green,
Yeah.
as I recall. And then they also did the LED replacements in the rec rooms.
Well, Super Green did the rec rooms, but staff did the Garden Villa exterior lighting replacement.
Just the bulbs in, no?
The fixtures, all the round fixtures that go.
And the wall.
Oh, no, I'm talking about in the garages.
Yeah, just the LED, replace the fluorescent bulbs?
Huh?
We've got LEDs in the garage.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
All the fluorescents.
In the garage.
In the garages
Yeah,
were
yeah.
replaced with
By-
LED
It was by
tubes.
Super Green, that's correct.
With Super Green. All the transformers were disconnected. I think we left them in place so that we didn't have to deal with the,
Balance,
yeah.
yeah.
So all that's been done. So I guess my question would be, would it make the most amount of sense perhaps to go back to Super Green and say, could you put an ox sensor in the garages,
What sensor?
occupancy sensor,
Occupancy, okay.
like when you walk into a room and the lights go on?
I see.
And put a couple of those sensors in, because my recollection is the LED lights are, half of them are on during the day.
Right.
And all of them are on at night. God, I've been here too many years. And they're familiar with the wiring. They've replaced all those fixtures for us. So that might be a very quick way to get this pilot underway, because they're already there. They're already familiar with it. So could you put an ox sensor at, for example, near the door to the mailroom, which would be a point of entry and exit, which would make things happen, or over by the garage entrance? But those lights are on all night anyway,
And they're pretty bright in there.
and
but
they're
I
pretty
think-
bright in there, so.
I don't know what Jack's perception was, is to get floodlights that just really blinded somebody and,
Well, yeah, especially when you're driving in. They are bright lights. They're not, they're plenty bright for, what we had suggested is that we put in lights that would be down lights that would only go on when somebody enters. And simply the experience of having a bright light go on that wasn't there before, hopefully would deter a thief. Otherwise, I haven't got much in my toolbox. Okay.
So you've got some entrances that
Got
are
three.
only one entrance, or there's a side entrance.
Right.
right,
A walkway entrance and the drive-in entrance.
right.
Then you have other ones up in gate 14 that have great big holes in the concrete, and you can just step over them in between the cars. So you'd have a different configuration there. But where would most people who don't belong there be making their entrance? Through the
It
side?
wouldn't necessarily have to be at the entrance. Once you get into the space, the lights could go on. I think just the sudden bright light might avert a would-be robber.
So you'd have to do it at every
Well,
ingress, egress point?
No,
and this is why we're going to have Tim here,
Yeah.
because Tim has lots of experience with this, I'm pretty convinced.
So I have had a conversation with Jack, and I appreciate you making the phone call, and we can have an opportunity to discuss this. First of all, just let's talk a little bit about the village and security in here. It's a pretty safe community. What crime we have is very minor. We don't have the break-ins to residences. We don't have any violent crime in here. Most of our crime is crime of opportunity. They see something, they see an easy target, and our criminals will go after that. People say, hey, my place was robbed, and just I want to provide a little clarity on that. Robbery is a felony. Robbery is a crime of force or fear. We don't have robberies in here. We have petty thefts and maybe sometimes grand theft when it's over $950. But I get that. Our residents don't know the difference between a petty theft, a grand theft, and a robbery. But I get a little defensive when someone says, I have been robbed. You've been a victim of theft, but a robbery is at a much higher level. I'd be calling the sheriff's department saying, I need more patrol in here when we're dealing with a bunch of robberies. So what we are seeing is some petty thefts. It's a crime of opportunity. They're coming in late afternoons when it's still light out. Many of our cul-de-sacs are pretty isolated, and there's not much activity going on. Once our workers are done for the day, There's not much activity going up and down some of these streets. And besides the lighting aspect, you're looking for potential witnesses. This community shuts down early at night. You all know that. So not much activity going on. Most people have free access to carports. One of the things that we've tried to convince and tell our people is don't leave valuables in your cabinets. If you're going to lock them up well. Our folks are trusting here. You seniors are wonderful people. You are trusting. You are generous. I wish we could get rid of some of the vagrants out there that are begging at our street corners, but they come there for a reason, and that's because we're giving them money. And they're, oh, well, you should understand. But we've got those types of folks that are coming in here because, one, we are a generous community. But the other thing with the thefts is because we are an easy target. I can't tell you how many people just leave their golf clubs in their golf cart at night, or they leave their bicycle and it's not locked up, or they leave those cabinets and they're not very secure. So what Jack is saying in reference to, I've got a few senior neighbors who are afraid to come down to their carports at night. That's unfortunate. I agree with that. We're doing what we can. The high visibility patrol, see something, say something. We're getting it out there. Our stats overall are very low. There have been a few areas that have been hit. Unfortunately, Jack's one of them. In the Garden Villas, we were seeing a few issues with our mailboxes. Somebody's coming in and busting into our mailboxes. We're not sure what they're taking because we're not seeing the identity thefts. We're not seeing people losing checks or any types of valuable mail yet. So it's kind of an odd thing. It's slowed down. We haven't seen any in a while. So those are things we're looking at. If there is a lighting issue, if we want to try it, anything that can improve security here, I'm certainly on board with that. But my understanding is we do have some lighting that's in our cul-de-sacs, in our carport areas to provide additional light on top of light. I'm not sure what that's going to accomplish. If what Steve is saying is we already have light in there, if a brighter light goes on, is that going to prevent someone from doing something? I'm not quite sure about that. If it's pitch black and a light goes on, sure, absolutely. But I will tell you, when we were out and about working a problem of the mailboxes, I had resources out there every night, and the one thing they did tell me is this community is pitch black at night. It's tough. When there's no cars out, when the sun goes down, it's easy to lurk in and out of the shadows. And so how do you address that? That's a big problem. For us in security, we do what we can. High visibility patrol, we encourage our folks to call. We will continue doing that. If the board would like to move in that direction, we're in support of it. Not just sure how much that's going to make a difference because crime is pretty low here. Very low, one of the best in the county.
Yeah, we got Kush and then Jack.
I will concur with you, Tim. It is very safe out here. And we've been here almost 2 years now. On Halloween, it will be 2 years exactly. My suggestion for this is that although light may be a deterrent, we do have the capability of facility or opportunity to put cameras in those buildings that have a problem. Because there's a rec room and we can take the feed out of the rec room and put the cameras. Because if we have a place of opportunity and people are taking advantage of that situation, then we'll be able to catch them. And then we might be able to get rid of the vagrants they are concentrating on that. And what I also found in these several years of my life living all over the place, the people who come and attack you or your house or the building, they are familiar with the surroundings and they will only go there. I've lived around a lot and moved a lot in California, and we've lived many places. I was a victim of burglary once where we lost a lot of jewelry, but we knew who did that. they were the maintenance staff of that building. When we told the police department, they wouldn't go and search them or question them. But we know they were casing our house, and we saw that. So the people who know you will attack you. So I'm sure they are trying, somebody is targeting that building for a reason.
Right, I'm not so sure about that.
But
Krish.
maybe that's my perception.
Right, and I appreciate that, and only because our statistics have also shown, working with the sheriff's department, when we have stopped a few folks, and we find them in possession of a pass, and they were a legitimate guest, and that's why they were able to get through our gates. And then while they were in, they visited their friend, what have you. But while you're in, hey, quick little drive around, not going to hurt anybody. And then they see something and they take action, and that's that crime of opportunity. So they don't always have a connection. Sometimes they do. We're dealing with an issue right now where we've got a granddaughter, and matter of fact, she's on her way to jail right now.
Okay.
She was, coming back in, causing problems. We have that issue here in this community where many of our relatives don't have anywhere to go when they get out of jail. They come back home, and then they take advantage of their parents, and it's unfortunate. They are allowed in here. They then come in and they look for opportunities in other buildings to try to maybe support their habit or make an extra few bucks if they can steal some property. So,
You're right.
I understand what you're saying. This is such a unique community, as you all know, and the layout is such that when you have carports, they're not garages. For those in other parts of the community, Gate 11 area, you got a closed garage. That's a secure point right there. You're not coming through. You come into there, and that changes it from a petty theft to a burglary, and they're gonna take the path of easiest resistance here, and that's those carports with those cabinets and that are easy to just pop open. So we can certainly look at lights, but again,
Listening to you and listening to Steve has given me an idea. What if we just reconfigure the lighting that is there, so in the evening, the daytime configuration remains, but turns to nighttime when somebody comes into the garage? That would be cheap, and it would show movement would be detected.
Sure.
It may do nothing, but it would certainly give confidence to the women in our building that we're
absolutely.
listening to them.
In working with the boards, when we've had those break-ins to our mailboxes, we put a few we've got several cameras out even right now.
Oh, good.
And Jack, if you could identify, and I obviously could work with you, if there's a few specifically that have been hit more than
Sure.
once,
Sure.
then we can put cameras in there. We can put cameras in there for anywhere up to 6 months and what have you. But we do try to place our cameras throughout the community. We work with your residents, by the way, when someone's having a neighborhood dispute and they've had their car vandalized, that's happened, or they had some other criminal act. We assist, we will hook up a camera, we will put it on their manor, we'll put it on their carport. So we have done that, and we're certainly willing to do that again for your building and maybe, one or two others in the area.
Okay.
Okay?
So Jack, is that good? I mean,
It's a start.
would you work with Tim
I'd be
and work
delighted.
it out with your residents?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, Bert.
This is not directly related to this, Tim, but you may know about this, and Lynn, you may know about this. In one of the three-story buildings, we had a dispute between two tenants living next to one another, and one of them, unbeknownst to us, had installed cameras in the garage, and they were spying on this person living next to them. And we discovered it, I guess, when they moved out. They were renters and they moved out.
Sure.
Did you know about that?
I know of a few cameras where we've allowed owners of agencies to
I
put in.
don't think they were allowed.
No, okay, yeah.
And we have other people not living in three-story buildings who have security cameras.
Sure,
And we've run into that too. Okay.
got it. So Jack, I'll work
I will
with
be
you.
in touch.
Got it.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay. We are on 14, but let's go back to number 13. Cleaning of alteration patio covers as a chargeable service. Okay, Bunny?
First, I want to ask Ernesto, do we really have the personnel to be able to accommodate our residents on cleaning these patios? Because from what I've heard from the people that complain, the leaves that fall in and everything is almost like a weekly service. And so to me, I could see this as being overwhelming to our staff.
Yeah, if Mr. Chair, I can unequivocally tell you that we don't have the staff to do that. We've added,
Why it's a discussion item.
that's correct.
But I'm
yeah,
asking, yeah, I
she's
asked
asking
the
me,
question.
But there's a number of chargeable services that we've added to the list, as I indicated to the committee last time and the board as well. We are going to attempt to provide all the services. However, there is a possibility that we may need additional staff to do this in the future. We don't know that because we don't know the amount of calls we're going to receive. We may or may not get those calls. But to add something like this, which is very labor intensive,
Right.
and it's the frequency that it's needed in order to keep up with it is high. I can tell you, as I said, with certainty that we don't have the staff to provide that.
Well, one other question on that. There's companies that probably do come in and clean, right, that could be contracted with. So possibly there would be a recommendation, to the residents that they could contract with those particular persons to come in or those particular vendors to be able to come in and give them their weekly or monthly cleaning that is necessary.
Oh, absolutely. There's tons of landscapers in or around the community that can offer that service to the residents. Yeah.
Okay. Bert?
I'm a little confused. Of course, I'm confused about a lot of things, but on this situation, don't we have an outside company that comes around and cleans out gutters?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
gutters.
And they come around, I think, at least once a year, correct?
Once annually.
That is correct. It's an annual
Okay.
service.
And when they come to me, they clean out the gutter that I have along my patio cover. It doesn't seem to be a big issue. It's not a lot of leaves. If you have a guy up on the roof, he can just do it. Now, he may not be able to do it every month, but at least when they come around, I don't see that as really extending much the work that he has to do.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement that the company that comes out, their charge is to clean the gutters. The primary concern is to make sure that our gutters work.
Right.
And that should be really it. This is more of an aesthetic issue, if at all, to keep the patio covers clear of leaves. But when the company comes in, they will clean the gutters. And I imagine if they see leaves that are going to end up in the gutter in the next couple of days, that they will probably blow those leaves off as well. So you're correct. They'll probably be doing that.
Steve?
I have a patio cover. It's just not a simple slope that ends up at a gutter. It's one of those aluminum and vinyl. I didn't put it in, it was in the unit. So what you have is you have these U-shaped, right, that are mounted underneath crossbars, and the eucalyptus trees rain hell on the roofs all year long, and it does get into those patio covers. So I think what the problem is with those style of patio covers. If you put a patio cover on your unit and it's continuous shingle or rubber roof, or you've got skylights in it or something like that, that's a different kind of patio cover. These other kind of patio covers are very difficult to clean. I've cleaned it myself on a number of occasions, and you can't walk on them. And if they're older ones, like I have, you cannot get replacement parts for them. So if you crack the nylon U-shaped channels that go in there, They're broken and they will leak on the patio. So from a chargeable services point of view, that would also not be very good for the mutual because people would say, I hired you to clean it, you broke it, now you got to fix it. And you won't be able to fix it. And then they'll say, well, then, now you'll have to replace it. So just from personal experience.
That's a pretty good observation. Okay.
So we'll just have to come back and say,
Yeah, that they need to go find their own, they need to find their own handyman or contractor to clean it off for them.
And there's plenty out there.
Okay.
see, so notice, we did not just add it to the list.
Good for you.
Right.
Something
Okay.
we might have done in the past.
Right. So I'm going to close that discussion because I'm in that mode today. We're going to move on to number 15, videoing the before and after of the streetlight poles in certain areas of Third. Basically, I brought this up as an idea to Ernesto here about 6 weeks ago, no, not even that long ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And basically just as something to record what it was like driving down Carrizo or Sociega or Paseo del Lago East at night with the current mushroom top street light poles. And I thought it would be interesting when we start doing the pilot to see what Siemens is going to put in there for LED lighting and how that lighting is going to change. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't have a good memory for, all I could tell you at 5 years from now is that, yeah, the street lighting was a lot dimmer than it is now. But in terms of, if you want a record of that, so you could actually physically show people a before and after of what it looked like before and what it looked like after, it might be of some value, but it may not be of any value to anybody in and of itself. It was just a suggestion. So Cush heard that, and he knows people in the video club, and he thought, well, geez, maybe they could do that for free. I originally had talked to Ernesto and said, I don't know what TV6, what kind of, capabilities they have if they want to come out at night. But Cush, anyway, picked up the ball on that and went to the video club, and that was kicked around, and it sounded like some people there would be willing to do it. Now, I don't know if it's, that's as far as it's gotten. So it's open for discussion what people think of the idea and whether we would have like the video club do it for us. Any commentary? Okay, Cush, you want to turn your, and then John.
The good thought is that we will have a recording of like a history thing. And we all have limited memory as we grow older. But this would also be a selling point to new owners that we are constantly working on improving our investment over here. So they will understand that we have moved forward and we are constantly changing. Also, the video club is a group of residents, and they do this as a hobby. And they love to play with all these toys that they have. They have nice high-end cameras, which are bought by some grants from GRF and sometimes personal donations. So I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to just talk to somebody and kick it around for a while to see if they can do it for us as a project for them.
Okay.
And
Bert?
they can have their name on it, so they'd be happy that they did it for the Third Mutual.
I think that's a good idea. I think you should get our communication director involved. You should speak to Eileen.
I think you're absolutely right.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, John?
Ernesto, and I'm pretty sure you're working on this, but I would like to have you pass out the photometrics for these new LED lights on the streetlights, so we can see what they look like.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact,
You might explain to the group here what a photometric is.
yeah, photometric is essentially a study of the reach of the light. So when any fixture has its own photometric study that's done in a lab. and essentially tells you how far does the lumens reach so that you could, so that it's visible to the eye. So the idea is that when each fixture that will be proposed through the Siemens contract will have its own throw of light. And the idea is that we set up some pilot locations where we can install those fixtures, and you can visually see as a community as to what these fixtures are doing for you, and you can compare it with the adjacent streets and see what the difference is. So we'll go through that process. In fact, Siemens, we're already working with Siemens, and we were going to bring a report back to you probably to either the Energy Task Force or to this body, and let you know what we're coming up in terms of the analysis of each of the fixtures that Siemens proposed and that we were in agreement with through the contract. So that analysis has already begun. We are determining what the cost of those fixtures are, what their ROI will be, and what their photometrics are, and all of that. So we're doing that in anticipation of acquiring the infrastructure. Once the infrastructure is acquired and the mutual owns it, we'll select the locations and we'll deploy those pilots for you to go visually, make a visual comparison.
Okay, so basically, since it's going to be a pilot, I mean, so anyway, we know what Siemens is going to do. I don't know whether the board wants Kush to pursue this with a video club to see if somebody wants to go and record those or not. I don't know how people feel about that.
What I think we should do is set a small committee together to talk to the video club and then let them with Ernesto or one of his team members. And that way we end with Eileen. So we can have a group working directly instead of the whole board being involved in that. And then whatever we decide, we can bring it back to the board, to the MNC, or whichever way we want. What is your thought on that?
Mr. Sheriff, if I may recommend, if that's the intent to work with Video Club to do some of this work, you can just simply tell the Video Club, start videotaping the streets. Just pick any street and start because I assume that they're going to drive them slowly with a video camera in the evening.
Yeah, but before we tell them to do it, they want to meet with us and get some idea on what we are doing, because all I asked was will they be willing to do this project? So we are still at the beginning of a crossroad. So let's get everybody together in a room at least once, answer all the questions, and move that way. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Rosemary?
We had a commit this morning that we were going to try to have less meetings, right?
Yep.
So I think that, if I were to suggest a way, I think that you should get one or two people from the M&C committee to meet with the video club and say, we don't need to involve staff at this point, and say, because it's like we're going to meet and this is what we'd like to do, and they say we could do it. Then, once it's all sort of planned, then you can go back to Ernesto and said, I have them ready to go. Do you have a recommendation as to where we could film them? Because what we're supposed to do is to try to tie up staff as little as possible.
Agreed.
For fear of being beheaded. So, right? I was in France. No, but no. The thing is, but I think it's a great idea. So if you would get maybe one person from the M&C committee, say,
Sure.
I really want to work with you on that.
Okay.
Then work with the video committee, and then get it all together, and then just present it to Ernesto. And
Okay.
being that you volunteered to chair the committee when Bill retires, which is today, it'd be your baby.
Thank you. The only reason we wanted Ernesto in case there were some technical questions
That
which we
and-
cannot answer,
Well,
that then doesn't have to be Ernesto himself, but
well,
could be
again-
anybody.
Again,
Yeah.
we should get our little plan out late and then
Okay.
bring it to him. Does that work for you, Ernesto? Or do you want to go to all the meetings?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
You want to come around at 9 o'clock at night here in November?
I'd love to.
Yeah, right.
We're thinking Christmas Day.
Right. Steve?
Siemens is going to do a review of our photometrics now. They're going to install pilots, and they're going to do photometrics of that, right?
They're going to do photometrics
Right.
of the pilots, that's
Right.
correct.
So they have to take photometrics before, I would imagine, to have a baseline of what the lighting is now. And then after they do their pilots, then they'll have, here's pilot 1, pilot 2, pilot 3. Siemens has a contract with you guys. Maybe you can just ask them if they take some video while they're in the process of doing the work
That's it.
at no additional
Idea.
cost. Ernesto?
Photometrics are not video.
Yeah, they're
Well-
two different things. If we could ask Siemens if they want to provide videos of the community, but I'm sure that they're going to be asking for additional costs for that.
Well, they're going to be on site. They're going to be doing the photometrics. If they take video while they're on site, while they're doing the photometrics, you can ask. All they can do is say no.
Oh, we can certainly ask, yeah.
Sure.
That's-
Are they actually going to do photometrics before?
I'm not aware that they were proposing to do photometrics before, but it would kind of make sense, like Steve said,
Ask.
establish a baseline. So we would definitely ask them. that-
Yeah, ask them if they're
Provide
going to
their
do
lights
that, and
without-
if they could video it then.
They have to provide the photometrics on the lights.
Yeah, they
Right.
would definitely provide the final photometrics, yes.
Ask them to video.
Okay.
All they can do is say no.
So we've got two suggestions here. Oh, we're going to just run with both suggestions and meet in the middle somewhere?
See what happens.
Okay. Since I won't be here to tie those loose ends up, somebody needs to, Kush, make it responsible for that, and
Okay.
Ernesto
Either
knows.
it'll be Kush or Bunny, and she's
Yeah.
already hiding.
You noticed that.
Sorry, she's getting like this
Right.
behind John.
Right. That's right. We're looking for a rabbit hole back there.
We can still spot you,
Okay, well, good, yeah, Bert?
Yeah, while you're here, we're talking about the project. Can you give us an update? Are they on, what does the timing look? Are they on schedule?
Absolutely. Edison is not. Surprise. We're looking at really December, possibly January to go through and have the acquisition come through so that we can issue them a check for the infrastructure. We can't do anything physically with Siemens until we own the fixtures. So we can't go out there and replace fixtures until they're ours. So we're waiting for Edison. However, in the meantime, we asked Siemens to begin to evaluate the fixtures and give us what the ROI would be relative to the energy savings, to provide us photometrics, to tell us how they're going to fit relative to the fixtures that we have right now. So they're doing all of that, and they're going to provide us a report, which I'm going to bring to you at possibly the next energy task force. So we're doing all of that, but the critical path is really acquisition of the infrastructure, and we're waiting for Edison on that.
So they're not in a position to do an inventory of the streetlights themselves?
They were supposed to be doing that inventory this month.
Right,
Yeah. So
okay.
we're waiting, and we're hopeful that they'll be able to do it on the time that they had given us, but it's not unusual for Edison to delay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're at the end of reports. I've got future agenda items. We've got a resident here to talk about an appeal at 3 o'clock. I'd like to have a 5-minute break at some point, so I'm going to go to concluding business for the open meeting. Are there any committee member comments or advisors? We'll start right down with Steve. Jack?
No.
We're going to go right around. Jack?
No.
Roy?
Yeah, I want to thank you for your chairmanship and wish you all the best in your future life, which will probably be very different from the one that you...
Lonely.
And lonely. You won't have all of us to play with. But thank you, Bill. Really appreciate it.
Well, you're
what you've
welcome.
done.
You're welcome. Thank you.
He's blushing.
Just don't go too far. We want to reach out and touch you.
I'm sorry I missed the beginning, but we were meeting with the recruiting company for the new CEO or whatever, to replace Brad. So, but do we have the dryers anywhere on any list? Did you
Yes,
talk
we
about
do.
that?
I know you were out of town for a week, the closed session.
Closed session
So, all right.
coming up.
Certainly, we're going to have a lot of discussion about that.
All right,
Okay?
okay.
John? Bunny? Kush?
Yes, I want to concur with Roy and Steve, and thank you. I've learned a lot in the last few months from you, and hope to see you around the village at least.
Oh, I'm not
In the
leaving.
village, at least.
I'm going to be around. I'm going to be here at least once a month or once every 2 months at the Energy Task Force, for certain. But
Definitely.
I really probably come to the Finance Committee meetings because I want to find out where you're spending the money.
Oh, sure.
Keep an eye on Steve.
Keep an eye on Jack.
Well, yeah, he needs to be.
I want to reaffirm what other people have said. I think you've done a really great job running this committee and running all your other 7 committees, and I want to wish you well.
And
Thank you.
as they would say in Spanish, igualmente. Same back at you, okay?
Thank you.
James?
Well, I want to echo everybody else says, thank you for your nice job for all the committees. But I would love you, someone somehow in the maintenance construction committee invite you as an advisor. Those experiences are precious. We don't have too many people have those experiences. We ought to make use of all the experience we can have. That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to, the date of the next meeting is going to be November 5th. And so I'm going to recess this committee so we can go into closed session. And let's all meet back here at 3 o'clock so we can talk about the appeal. This meeting is recessed.